ABC Television Network presents from Washington, D.C. Open Hearing. Here now is John Secondari, Chief of the ABC Washington News Bureau.
Good evening. Tonight we bring you a progress report on freedom and equality in our country. It is a difficult subject, and because it is difficult, it is controversial, and because it is controversial, it is important. Integration and the hopes of our people. That is the subject of tonight's open hearing.
Share high adventure. Take a bold journey every week to far-off lands or places of unusual interest right here in our own country. Join venturesome travelers who have captured on film the beauty and thrills of their journeys. Don't miss the next bold journey on a different day and hour beginning this week. See it every Monday night on most of these same stations. Your destination tomorrow night, the top of the highest mountain in North America. Grant Pearson, who has spent 30 years with the National Park Service, is your guide, narrating the breathtakingly beautiful filmed record of his 3-month climb to the summit of Mount McKinley in Alaska. Follow the expedition's progress by plane, dog sled, and on foot to the 20,267-foot high peak. Along the way, take in the magnificent scenery of Mount McKinley National Park. Join your host, John Stevenson, for a bold journey to Alaska. Don't forget the new departure time every Monday night. The place, most of these same stations.
Speak of segregation and you think of the South, but you are in error. The problem of equal rights for different people exists all over our nation. It is a problem in New York and in New Rochelle, in Chicago, in Ellington, in Detroit, in San Francisco. We hear of it more often in the South because there it has a wider spread. But this much we can say. It is a problem in constant change and in constant solution. As our nation grows older, we become more tolerant, and problems become less of a crisis and more just obstacles which must be overcome. Our national strength lies in our capacity to solve these problems, which no other nation ever solved before. What follows is a filmed report. It was prepared by the Fund of the Republic. It is a documentary. There are no actors. The people are real. The words they say are their words. It is a progress report. It shows how far we have come, how much further we still have to go.
Guide me, O thou great Jehovah, pilgrim through this barren land. We are weak, but thou art mighty. Hold us with thy powerful hand. Yes. I'm praying tonight that thou will not grow weary of listening to us. Have mercy on us tonight. Doesn't matter how the clans may march. It doesn't matter what the White Citizens Council decides. We will not be afraid because God is on our side.
This is the South, and these are Southern Negroes. Their lives and the lives of other Americans differ greatly, but if we seek similarities, we find many. They grow, they work, they marry, and they have children. Their children go to school. They have churches and fraternal orders, and they serve in the armed forces of their country. They like refrigerators and cars, and to own their own homes. These are Southern whites. Their needs, too, are the universal ones: security, comfort, self-improvement. Gone are the days of the cotillion ball. The South of today is a working South. Husbandry of the soil is still the most important economic factor, but it is no longer the sole important source of income. The gleaming pylons of industry are being raised. This is a time of new prosperity. Southern Negroes and Southern whites are, of course, alike in many ways. But traditionally, the relationship between these two groups has been based not on similarities, but on differences. Thus, Southern Negroes and Southern whites, while identical in appearance to Negroes and whites elsewhere, live under a very different set of rules. Certainly, the South has had no monopoly on interracial problems. Many of the worst race incidents in our history have occurred in the deep North. But because the Negro population in the South is proportionately much greater, it has long been considered the focal point. Since before the Civil War, there have been Negroes in the South who pressed for equality, the right to take their place among men. As their educational standards rose, as their experience with the outside unsegregated world increased, the number of those who spoke out for equality also increased. Membership in the Negro rights organizations burgeoned. Plans were laid. Suits were filed. On May 17, 1954, the Supreme Court of the United States made a ruling which changed the entire complexion of the struggle. In the field of public education, the court said, the doctrine of separate but equal has no place. Separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. This long-sought decision gave the Negro a potent legal weapon with which to press his advance.
There is a brand new Negro in the South with a new sense of dignity and destiny.
Negro Americans, my friends, are on the march for their rights.
Negro Americans were on the march, but their march was not to be unopposed. A portion of the white citizens of the South decided to fight back. Citizens' councils were formed, dedicated by charter to the battle against desegregation in any form. One of the leaders in the fight was Conwell Shoup Sykes, chairman of the Greenville, Mississippi Citizens Council.
The pattern of segregation which has existed in the South through so many years is perhaps strange to people in other parts of the United States. We have more integration in Greenville and other sections of the South than you do in other parts of the nation. In many areas of Greenville, white and colored families live in the same block. Their children play together. However, their children do not go to school together. And as the white children and the colored children grow into men and women, the pattern of segregation is recognized by both white and colored. We have absolutely no intention of integrating in the South those areas which have been segregated for at least 100 years.
And an older organization was revived. Small but noisy, it was both hated and feared by many Southerners.
I have requested that I repeat the qualification of a Klansman, or I should say for citizenship in Invisible Empire, Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. That is to be a white-born, native, Gentile, American citizen over 18, of temple cabinet, and believe in the tenets of the Christian religion.
Women members were asked why they had joined the Klan.
Because it stands for white supremacy.
How about you?
Same here. Me too.
The South was in turmoil as a result of the court decision. Yet many Americans felt the question of interracial relations was much more than simply a Southern problem.
Let me also warn the United States against the do-nothing policy about efforts for the suppression of the Negro. For such a policy will tend to cause this country to lose the confidence, faith, and goodwill of the whole people of color in Africa and Asia, representing 2/3 of the population of the world.
It becomes apparent that the United States of America cannot lead the world on a Jim Crow basis.
To most Southern whites, America's foreign prestige was not the important issue in desegregation. They felt their way of life, the whole framework of tradition, in the tradition-minded South, was being threatened by outsiders who had no rightful voice in their affairs. Southerners had wakened one morning to find themselves labeled villains, living outside the law. There was even wild talk of sending federal troops into the South. The South was angry, and the South was perplexed.
I think that we're very satisfied with the conditions as they roll along now, and we don't want a lot of change. We like to keep it as it is. Let each person stay on their own side of the fence.
You wouldn't be for desegregation at all then, would you?
No, I think segregation is the proper thing.
What about this business that a lot of people say about being created equal? What's your feelings about that?
I don't think they are.
How so?
Well, I can't quote what I know
Well, may I ask where you know it from then?
from the Bible.
Some of my best friends are Negroes. If I got into trouble, I think the Negroes would come to me as quick as anybody else in the world. I give you a little instance. I was standing down on the street with a gentleman from another city last Saturday, and I reckon 15 or 20 Negroes passed, and I spoke to them. Good morning, John. How you getting along? Very well, thank you, Mr. Wall. Getting on fine. And that went on for 15 or 20 Negroes in less than 15 minutes. And we love our people.
Leroy Percy, Mississippi cotton planter, a quiet, thoughtful man.
In the South, we find ourselves in this position. One of the fundamental basic foundations upon which the relationship between the races was based have been for over 100 years segregation. Whether that's right or wrong, all of a sudden we are told by the Supreme Court that the whole basis for our society in the South has not only been wrong, but 100% wrong. And actually, it's easy to understand why this created such a shockwave in the South.
White supremacy had always been an important political factor in some areas of the South. Again, political leaders rushed to the defense of segregation.
Within the South, we must organize every county, every city, and every community into a grassroots organization such as you represent here tonight. You, through your Citizens' Council, are the hard and inflexible core of resistance in Alabama. My friends, the road ahead is not easy. When groups can control the Supreme Court and control the President of the United States, I don't have to tell you that they must be reckoned with. I think I know the people of Alabama, and I'll tell you now, you are not going to permit the NAACP to take over your school.
In Washington, a Southern Manifesto was signed by 96 Southern congressmen. It was without legal force, but it dramatically proclaimed the determination to resist desegregation and expressed the South's anger at what it considered outside interference. Senator George reads a portion of the manifesto.
We commend the motives of those states which have declared the intention to resist forced integration by any lawful means. We pledge ourselves to use all lawful means to bring about a reversal of this decision, which is contrary to the Constitution, and to prevent the use of force in its implementation.
On the desegregation side, at the 1956 convention of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, a policy on desegregation suits was adopted. Where school boards were willing to negotiate, legal action was to be avoided. But in the Deep South states, where resistance to desegregation was strongest, a stricter policy was laid down.
We instruct the National Legal Staff to immediately process and give the necessary legal assistance to all parents in those states who have appealed to us for legal assistance to end racial segregation in their local communities.
Negro rights organizations were not demanding immediate desegregation throughout the South, but many Southerners thought they were. Some answered never. From others came a plea, give us time.
You must recall that it took them 75 years to tell us what we ought to do. Looks like you ought to give us 50 years to comply. That'd be reasonable, wouldn't it? We could live with that.
But to the 10 million Negroes of the South, 50 years sounded like an awfully long time. UN diplomat Ralph Bunch voices their objection.
No one has ever been known to enjoy rights posthumously.
The Supreme Court had left the date of desegregation up to lower federal courts. The right time to desegregate in West Texas, the court reasoned, might not be the right time to desegregate in Mississippi. The question was, when, where? Should those questions be left up to the South? Thurgood Marshall, chief counsel for the NAACP, thought they should not.
I suggest that, quote, letting them work out their own problems, end of quote, means simply letting them continue forever their peculiar pattern of prejudice as usual.
There were other Negroes to whom desegregation was not important. Levy Chappelle of Mississippi.
Most of the reporters, the writers, cameramen and whatnot who've been coming into Mississippi recently are wanting to know if we are disturbed over this matter of integration. Well, we are not.
Reverend Harrison Henry Humes, Jr., Mississippi publisher and Baptist minister.
Segregation has proven that Negroes in the South, where it is practiced more, have done a fine job in making themselves secure by building his society and building an economic strength beyond that of many other sections of the United States of America.
From the state houses of the Deep South, there was no acknowledgement of the question when, no discussion of how best to cushion desegregation. Governor Coleman of Mississippi made his position clear.
That I have not the slightest fear that 4 years hence, when my successor stands on this same spot to assume his official oath, the separation of the races in Mississippi will be left intact and will still be in full force and effect in exactly the same manner and form as we know it today. During the next 4 years, Mississippi will be a state of law and not of violence.
This White Citizens Council meeting in Buena Vista, Georgia, was a festive affair. Featured speaker of the occasion was then Governor, now U.S. Senator Herman Talmadge.
God made them of different color, and that has been their color since God made them that color, and the only time they ever mixed up is when they violated the laws of God and the laws of man. Now, you know, my friends, God made us all, but there's two things that God never made. One of them's a mule, and the other one was a mulatto.
Sharing the platform was Leonard Wilson, expelled University of Alabama student.
You know, I always like to point out to the audience of good people where some of our trouble comes from. I'm sure all of you have heard of a woman named Eleanor Roosevelt. Now, I know we had a great deal of respect for her fine husband, but it is a reflection on any man who'll marry that kind of woman. But, you know, she was driving down through the Black Belt of Alabama one time, back during the war, I believe it was. She ran out of gas. She was fire set.
Did this have anything to do with the question of segregation in schools? Hardly. Somehow the issue had become obscured. Realistic discussions of education and the law became less common. This sort of thing became more common.
Out there in the section where I live, there in that district, who actually went to the polls and voted for that nigger, and they were so blamed ignorant they thought they were voting for a white man. That shows you how ignorant people are. Everybody ought to belong to the Citizens Council and get educated on the subject of politics and how to vote.
Misunderstanding had drawn the battle lines so taut by this time that many of the people who listened to men of this sort could find no middle ground. They felt they must either be here or in favor of all-out right-now integration.
Language to describe that bunch, I'd have to use a whole lot stronger than I'm permitted to use, being a minister of the gospel.
Amen.
They go into the auditorium of the gymnasium for the after-football game dance. Then comes along one of the nigger football players, and they all go piled in there together like that you are here tonight, just like a bunch of OICs and Berkshire hogs all trying to loosen a lot together. They go in there and they get to rubbing around, smelling that vanilla flavoring. Because you could see the hattie of your fair-skinned daughter, her dancing partner be tagged on the shoulder by some burr-head, liver, lip, goat-smelling, ape-faced nigger. Can you conceive such a thing? Are you going to do something about it?
And an insult to the common sense of people everywhere.
This is a white man, and we do not have to.
But in spite of the angry words and bitter resistance, the Supreme Court decisions were bringing desegregation to the South. Within 3 years, more than 350 school districts had desegregated in the 17 southern states and District of Columbia where segregation had been the pattern. And in the overwhelming majority of these, the change took place without incident. In Oak Ridge, Tennessee, operated by the federal government, the high school was desegregated and a Negro teacher assigned. Some student reactions.
Well, I don't know too much about it, but I don't think it'll go over as well as most people think it will.
Well, I think that this integration will work out real fine if there aren't any more displays of sidewalk painting and painting on the walls inside. And these people that do this sort of thing are disgraced to Oak Ridge High School.
In the field of higher education, only 5 states still maintain segregation in state-supported colleges and universities. And in every state in the South, with the sole exception of South Carolina, at least one private college is desegregated. This Negro student is attending North Texas State College at Denton, formerly an all-white school.
Everyone whom I have contacted here on the campus and en route to school and back home has been very kind to me.
The University of North Carolina is now desegregated. Dr. Guy Johnson, head of the sociology department there, has made a 30-year study of race relations in the South.
White students have had practically no problem as far as I can see. They have taken it all in pretty good strides. Most of them are either favorable or indifferent toward integration. The Negro student does have considerable academic difficulties. They have had relatively poor preparation, and we find that on the whole they are having more than their share of flumps. And they also encounter nearly everywhere considerable segregation and discrimination in the community outside the campus. Now, when we get toward the end of this process of integration, I think we will still have a great deal of separation, and this will be on a voluntary basis. What the Negro really wants, I think, is to see these laws and rules eliminated so that he can feel that he is a first-class citizen. He's not interested in intermarriage any more than I am, but he would like to feel that he has access to good public accommodations, to good educational institutions and everything else on the same basis as any other citizen. I think that integration is here to stay. We're going to see it come rather slowly in some parts of the South, but it will come.
100 years ago, slaves were sold on these courthouse steps in St. Louis. Today, St. Louis is desegregated. The change occurred quietly, without hysteria. Superintendent of Schools, Philip J. Hickey, tells why.
We feel that the pupils themselves have been real leaders in this whole desegregation pattern.
In Rollingwood, Maryland, as these scenes took place, desegregation was moving surely, slowly southward. This is Louisville, Kentucky. The desegregation of Louisville went so well that its superintendent of schools, Dr. Omar Carmichael, won special praise from President Eisenhower. But Louisville and St. Louis were not just happy accidents. Literally years of preparation paved the way for peaceful desegregation. The force of law was also brought to bear on segregation in public transportation. Rulings by the Supreme Court and Interstate Commerce Commission overthrew many state laws segregating waiting rooms and public carriers. Colored waiting room signs still remained in the South. Many Southern buses were still segregated. But the rulings were having their effect. In 11 states, transportation systems conformed in varying degrees with the law. Segregation signs came off buses in Dallas, Texas, a city where absolute separation of the races had been the rule. In Little Rock, Arkansas, Negroes chose their own seats on buses for the first time in history. Whether the response was acceptance or resignation or anger, the forces created by the Supreme Court decision on segregation were at work in every community. It was a time of turmoil in the South. Desegregation of public transportation in Dallas and Little Rock, in Durham and Portsmouth came easily and quickly. In Montgomery, Alabama, it was neither easy nor quick. On Monday, December 5th, 1955, there was something very different about the colored waiting benches in the town square of Montgomery. There was something different about the colored sections on the buses, too. Both were empty. The 50,000 Negroes of Montgomery weren't riding buses. They walked or took taxis. Those who had cars shared them. Soon they had a smooth-running transportation system of their own, complete with dispatchers and schedules. This parking lot was a major downtown pickup point. Why? Why, for the first time in history, was the entire Negro population of a major southern city conducting a full-scale economic boycott? Why were the Negroes of Montgomery walking? It had started with an incident, of course. All protests do.
I'm Rose Parks. I live in Montgomery, Alabama. I work as a seamstress in a department store. On December 1st, 1955, after working all day and was very tired, I got the bus to go home, and after I had taken a seat on the bus, the driver demanded that I give this seat up for a white man. I didn't feel that I was being treated as a human being. I refused to give up this seat. I said no, and I wouldn't give it up.
We have in Montgomery, Alabama, a spiritual movement. It is a movement of passive resistance, a non-violent movement. And we are fighting with the weapons of prayer and love. We believe that we can win because God is on our side, and deliberately so. We have planned a spiritual program. We not only encourage our people to walk, but we encourage that they walk and pray. All of our meetings are held in the churches. The meetings are scheduled for 7 o'clock in the evening. And I'm happy to say that at our last meeting, which was the past Thursday, people start gathering at 1 o'clock. And at 3 o'clock, you could not get a seat in the church, and they were singing and praying to God, asking Him to give them strength in order that they might continue to walk for freedom. And I'm happy to say that I asked my people before leaving Montgomery, I told them that I'm going up north, and the people will want to know, are you tired? And from the congregation of 3,000 or more, they said, no, we're not tired. I said, you'll have to make it a little stronger than that. Are you tired? And they said, no. I asked them again, are you tired? They said, no. And one man said, now, Reverend, you've asked us that question for 3 times. And if you ask it again, I will have to tell you, hell no, we ain't tired. Let's listen to Reverend M.L. King, Jr., the president of the Montgomery Improvement Association.
Thank you very much, my friend. That's certainly very kind of you. Now, I will read this resolution. Whereas a majority of the Negro citizens of Montgomery, Alabama, have refrained from riding city buses since December 5th, 1955, because of mistreatment and because of the unconstitutional seating arrangement, and whereas it was reported that on Monday...
Martin Luther King, leader of the protest, a Southerner who had earned 2 doctoral degrees from Northern universities. At 27 years of age, he was pastor of a Baptist church in Montgomery, when he emerged as guiding spirit of the boycott.
High, intra-state, or unconstitutional. Be it therefore resolved that we, the Negro citizens of Montgomery, Alabama, do now and will continue to carry on our mass protest. Let's hear the motion. Let's hear the motion.
That the resolutions and the recommendations read by the President will be received and adopted, and that we will...
It has been moved and seconded that the resolutions as read will be received and adopted. Are you ready for the question? All in favor, let it be known by standing on your feet.
Bus company officials were reported ready to give in to the Negroes' demands, but the mayor and the city commissioners decided otherwise.
The city commission adhered to the position that it had originally expressed, that it will enforce all applicable Alabama statutes and city ordinances.
Let us pray for our great city. And above all, let us pray for the city commission.
For a year now, the boycott had continued. Then came victory for the Negroes of Montgomery. There was a celebration, and there was a rehearsal.
Reverend Johnson is the bus driver, so Reverend Johnson, you get started, sir. And you come up here, hold it right there now. You stop at the corner. And here, this lady's entering the bus here. All right.
Pass on to the back there. Pass to the back. You get up and pass to the back.
So I paid my fare now.
But go on to the back there.
You black nigger, you better not sit here.
Well, I paid my fare
Get
just
up.
like you did. I think I can sit here.
People are just carrying over the country. I don't know what this country's coming to.
This was the culmination, the day in Montgomery when Negroes chose their own seats. This could have been the end of the Montgomery story, but it wasn't. After a few quiet days of desegregation, violence came to Montgomery. Negro churches and Negro ministers' homes were bombed.
Yes, it might even mean physical death. But if physical death is the price that some must pay to free our children from a permanent life of psychological death, then nothing could be more honorable.
There were many levels of resistance to the principle of desegregation. Legislatures passed resolutions of nullification, motions of interposition. They passed laws abolishing public school systems in event of desegregation. They passed new pupil assignment statutes designed to avoid mixing of the races in the classroom. And in Washington, Southern representatives successfully blocked civil rights legislation. Senator James Eastland of Mississippi explains a rather special method he developed to avoid passage of a bill.
Truman had a civil rights bill that is 144 pages thick. You know what I did? I put a special pocket in my pants. And for 3 years, I carried those bills around on my person everywhere I went. And they accused me of violating their rights and violating the law. Now, what's the fact? I'm just as guilty as they said I was.
In some areas, economic pressure was applied to Negroes. L.A. Blackman, once a prosperous contractor in Ellery, South Carolina, signed a desegregation petition.
On account of being eliminated from any bill of material or any employment, I'm now distributing newspapers with an income of $20 to $25 per week.
Meanwhile, on the cultural front,
we've set up a 20-man committee to do away with this vulgar, animalistic, nigger rock and roll bop. Our committee will check with the restaurant owners and the cafes to see what bebop records is on their machines. They'll play the record and then just use their judgment in whether they should come off or not.
Asa Carter of Alabama organized the boycott on bebop.
We consider it a plot to undermine the moral standard of the Anglo-Saxon race and place him on the level with the Negro. I know that I shall not contribute money by purchasing of products from any man, white or black, who is contributing to my knowledge to the integration, the degradation, and the Mongolization of the white race.
There was economic pressure in the South. There was terrorism. There was violence. A man named Gus Courts put his name on a voting list in Belzoni, Mississippi.
They sit down and outlined and told me what they wanted to do. Said, now you want to make some money? Says, you go up there and take your name off. It's good faith. And if you take your name off, the rest of the niggers will take their name off. I said, well, I'm not going to take down. That's it. And so when I didn't take down on November the 25th, I was in my store waiting on my customer. After a while, just 15 feet from me, a gun fired through the window. Shot me in this arm and here in the side, and it went around in the stomach.
Now, Mr. Courts, how many Negroes did you say there were in the county where you lived in Belzoni?
17,000.
How many paid their poll taxes?
400.
How many registered?
94.
And how many are now registered?
1.
And who's that?
Me.
Many Negroes in the Deep South were afraid.
My people are afraid to fight for their own rights. Their fears are justified because none of us engage in this fight is safe.
There were riots. Lucy, a Negro registered for classes at the University of Alabama. School authorities refused to admit her until a federal court ordered them to do so. These rioters, some of them students, many of them outsiders, created so much violence that the university temporarily expelled the Negro girl on grounds of student safety.
Oh, I don't think that she should come down here because, well, my mother and my father and generations before that have always been taught that the colored and the white is a definite dividing line.
Arthurine said that her main purpose was to get an education, and if that was true, she had scholarships offered to Arizona and some school in Denmark. She could have went there and wouldn't have cost her a cent.
Integration is inevitable. However, the South isn't ready for that step, and I feel that that time should be decided by the South, and it is their decision to take.
The lawlessness which has prevailed the last few days at the University of Alabama represents a very small percentage of the student body. Elements from the outside have not only participated in the cross burnings, but also in the crowds that have invaded the campus.
After more hearings and more uproar, Arthur and Lucy was permanently expelled because of charges she had made against university officials. Desegregation was moving southward. The border states, where Negro population was relatively light, were the first to desegregate. Perhaps popular opinion was generally against mixed schools, but it was generally in favor of compliance with the law. Desegregation came to Tennessee. With it came a northerner named John Casper, and with John Casper came violence. These bayonets were pointed at the bellies of Americans in Clinton. Tanks rolled through the streets of Henderson, Kentucky. While these scenes of violence were taking place in the border states, the Deep South was relatively quiet. That was because there had been no attempt at desegregation in the Deep South, where segregation was much more firmly entrenched. And for a time, it looked as if there would be no desegregation in Tennessee. Negro schoolmates of these students had just been expelled.
Well, we're jolly happy to see it, because we think we can do better with just white.
They didn't want me to go to niggers. I ain't going to niggers.
I was a student at Sturgis High School until this morning. We was met at the door by a principal. We are not giving up yet.
The explanation of the quiet in the Deep South was simple, but it was frightening. If these were the results of desegregation in Tennessee and Kentucky, what would be the results in Mississippi? In Georgia? In South Carolina? Was there another way? Was there an out? A solution? Some Southerners thought there was. This meeting took place in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, the day Arthur and Lucy was expelled. Its goal, understanding. Interracial expert Dr. George Mitchell.
Reasonable men and women in the South are disturbed by the extremist views which now dominate the public life of our region. They believe that racial differences can be worked out in every community by responsible white and Negro citizens. The first step in this critically needed process is a calm sharing of views and ideas by informed representatives of both races within the South.
Robert Hughes, Executive Secretary of the Alabama Council on Human Relations.
We are going to have to take a frank look at reality, to accept reality for what it is, and to act therefrom, and not from a basis of what we would like for reality to be.
Question: how solid is the solid South? Is any communication taking place today between Negroes and whites? The answer is yes. On this day at Talladega College, only a short distance from the University of Alabama, quiet voices were speaking. The occasion, a student conference. The goal, communication. Communication between two groups who had grown up side by side, but who knew little about how the other felt.
Well, I think you bring a point to my mind that I've been so worried about lately, and that's the point that the students lack the guidance that they need from the adults in this particular question, because the adults here in Alabama are so prejudiced, even your own family are so prejudiced, and you can't possibly on your own just walk out and say, well, look, here I am, I'm going to revolutionize the world, I'm just going to change it all.
that's the reason I made the statement that we can't change the older people, but it's for the youth to take this change now.
We too have a certain amount of racial hate. I think I mentioned in the meeting that it isn't easy for a person who has been subjected to certain cruelties by persons on their same human level and who have been subjected to certain physical inconveniences as well as mental insults and spiritual insults to readily accept the white race.
This is Clarksdale, Mississippi. Population 20,000. About evenly divided, Negro and white. It's a cotton town near the center of the lush Mississippi Delta. A black belt town, old in structure and tradition. The place of many churches. Visually, Clarksdale is a stereotyped southern community. A segregated town of unshod field hands and pillared manor houses. It has a white citizens council and an NAACP chapter. The men's club of the Methodist Church has a catfish and hush puppy fry on the second Thursday of every month. This is Larry, 8 years old. He lives in Clarksdale and he goes to school there. This is Larry's school. Not a model, perhaps, but a good school. Ample buildings, ample grounds, and an adequate faculty. And this is Tad. Not his real name, but everybody calls him Tad or Tadpole. He lives in Clarksdale, too. And he, too, goes to school. This is Tad's school. It has to accommodate 500 children. It is seriously overcrowded, dilapidated. Its playground is cramped and under-equipped. Sanitary facilities are outdoor. Although there are many good Negro schools in the South, there is nothing exceptional about the contrast between Tad's and Larry's. There is, however, something exceptional about this. For the first time in history, the Clarksdale School Board was meeting with Negro parents and Negro school officials to discuss their children's welfare.
Mr. Mayo, as superintendent of our school, has made quite a study of our problems, and I'm going to ask you to more or less review how the school board is developing our schools now.
Well, the things that were brought out here in the discussion would take somewhere in the vicinity of 20 years, I suspect, to attain all those, or maybe that long to really acquire a need for some of these things that we have. I think we should take first things first.
Mr. Mayo, some of us have been greatly concerned about the crowded condition over the classrooms over at Myrtle Hall School.
That is the worst situation we have and one that we're trying to correct.
Also in the field of curricular improvement, there is a need for a, shall we say, a curriculum coordination. That is, what is taught in one school, say in the 1st, 5th, 9th, or 12th grade, should be taught in all schools. The same textbooks used and the same amount of material covered. But I don't think, though, that all the courses are now being taught to all the children.
No, not
some children have the advantages of it.
You're right. That not all the courses are being taught to all the children. We try to vary it. And probably some curricula are not as full as they should be.
A long way from desegregation, the things that were discussed in that meeting. But it was a new beginning for Clarksdale. The beginning of interracial communication at the community level. How did Clarksdale feel about it? This is Pete Williams, Secretary of the Citizens Council.
both the Citizens Council and the officials of the city of Clarksdale are very much interested in seeing equal facilities for the niggers in Clarksdale.
Tom Ross, chairman of the school board.
I think that particular meeting will work to the advantage of our entire school system.
Aaron Henry, president of the NAACP chapter.
It is my feeling that our greatest need, or the greatest area wherein we need to work and to make progress, is in the field of liaison groups between the two races, wherein the two of us can come together oftener with less tensions and discuss the problems that confront us both and do something about solving them. Hence, we will have a situation that will not be always tight or taut when we come together.
And do you see indications in Clarksdale today that such a condition is in the future?
Yes, we think we see the bud of such a flower, yes.
Whether the bud of that flower will survive is yet to be seen. It is a time of crisis in the South, a time of riots and shootings and hooded riders. It is a time of change. But it is a time, too, when men of goodwill are beginning more and more to realize that problems are solved by thinking and talking, not by hating.
The choice before the South is falsely represented as a choice between absolute segregation and immediate all-out integration. If the South is to continue to progress as a modern industrial society, we must meet the great question of our time with maturity and responsibility.
Here in Alabama, as well as throughout the rest of the Deep South, there are thousands upon thousands of persons of moderate persuasion, white persons, who have yet to express themselves. It is this group, the moderate middle ground of the Deep South, that will provide a basis for a building up of interracial goodwill and cooperation. The big problem is, will this group be organized, and will it become vocal, and will it provide that bridge which is so greatly needed between our Negro and white populations?
Here's the man responsible for the most talked about television show in America today, Mike Wallace.
If you're interested in what accomplished people in various fields really think about their life and times, if you want to know the attitudes, the motives that prompted the acts which brought these people to public attention, watch our show, Mike Wallace Interviews. And if there is someone you may be interested in seeing on Mike Wallace Interviews, please let us know. Name the person, tell us why you want him or her interviewed. Write to me, Mike Wallace, care of ABC, New York 23, New York. If we feel your request is of national interest, we'll do our best to interview the personality you want to see and hear. In the meantime, be sure to watch us each week on this ABC station.
Mike Wallace Interviews is live and unrehearsed. Within the bounds of honest journalism, no question, no personality is considered too controversial. Remember to tune in Mike Wallace Interviews this week.
Mary Margaret McBride is the guest on Mike Wallace tonight on most of these same stations.
What you have seen tonight is probably the deepest problem of our country. Freedom of the individual is our national trademark. It is sanctioned by the Bill of Rights, guaranteed by the Constitution, confirmed by the Supreme Court. But neither the writing of a law nor the handing down of a decree can be enough to combat a situation as old as our nation and as widely spread. That change of attitude which alone can guarantee equality to everyone, that can only come from our increased tolerance. This was a progress report. You have seen how far we have come. You know how far we still have to go. This is John Secondary. Good night.
Open Hearing with John Secondary originated in Washington, D.C. and was directed by Richard Stratton.
This is ABC Television Network.